Welcome everybody to another Motocross Action video. I'm Josh Mosman, and today we are testing the 2023 Honda CRF250. We got Ezra Lewis in the gear today, and he's going to be shredding on the CRF250. This bike is exactly the same as it was in 2022, but it was really last year when this thing got the whole overhaul, gained the 450 chassis and an all-new CRF250 engine. Honda went from a high-revving, high RPM screaming engine to a more low to mid power plant. They had a lot more grunt coming out of the corner, so got a big thumbs up on the engine, but the suspension, they definitely missed the mark on it last year. So for 2023, unfortunately, nothing has changed, but we know this bike like the back of our hands, and we are excited to explain all we know about it in this video and show off some cool clips of Ezra Lewis throwing down. The Honda CRF250 was known for being a great handling motorcycle up until 2021, with great suspension that was nice and pleasant for a wide range of riders. Our young 250 test riders that were lighter in weight could feel comfortable on the CRF250 in 2021 and prior, and even our pros and heavier test riders could hop on that bike. Yes, the suspension was too soft. They could still be comfortable on that motorcycle and handled extremely well. Then for 2022, like I mentioned at the top of the video, Honda completely changed its philosophy, went from a high revving CRF250 engine in 2021 with not a lot of bottom end power, and they completely flipped it for 2022 with a brand new engine and brand new chassis. So this bike adapted to the Honda CRF450 frame and swing arm, bodywork, and all the exotics that came on the 450 way back in 2021. If you follow your motorcycle brands closely, or if you follow Motocross Action, you usually see a brand come out with a brand new 450, and then the year following, the 250 model follows suit. So that's what Honda did. 21 was the new 450, 22 was the new 250. That's what Yamaha is doing this year. They got for 2023 a brand new YZ450, and 2024 we'll see a brand new YZ250F that mimics the 450. So previously the CRF250 was extremely comfortable, but just lacked a lot of bottom end grunt. For 2022, they flipped the power. They put so much emphasis on the bottom end grunt, but they ended up losing some of that top end power that they had before. Jet Lawrence proved that this bike is extremely capable at the highest levels when in the hands of the HRC factory Honda team. He won the 250 East Coast Supercross Championship in 2022, and then he backed up his 250 National Championship this year as well. So very successful year for Honda in the 250 class, with Jet Lawrence going extremely well and very dominant on this bike. Talking about the engine, Honda almost mimicked the Yamaha YZ250F power. Everybody knows that the YZ250F is known for great bottom end grunt and just good momentum coming out of corners with a good amount of torque. While KTM and Kawasaki, they're known for being high RPM engines that you really have to rev to get the most out of the power. Yes, KTM is actually very strong in the low end as well, but you almost don't realize it because there's so much more power in the top end. The Honda CRF250 in 2021, you really had to rev to get that bike to start singing. This 2022 and now the 2023 model that's sitting behind me, it almost feels like a Yamaha YZ250F on the track. And honestly, it sounds like a Yamaha YZ250F as well, which is not really a good thing with the stock pipe. I'm not a huge fan of it. A lot of guys complain about the stock Yamaha sounds, but on the track, this engine is a lot more exciting coming out of corners, and you really have to shift a lot to keep going through the RPMs. With that stronger engine that the CRF250 has for 2022 and 2023, you get a lot more excitement coming out of the corners. This thing wants to wheelie coming out of corners. It's easier to carry third gear, which is super hard for me being 175 pounds on a 250, but impressively, I was actually able to do that today. Ezra Lewis, MXA test rider who was in the video on this bike, he had some fun on it and was able to carry third gear in some of the corners as well. Talking about horsepower and dyno numbers, the 2023 Honda CRF250 peaks out at 40.7 horsepower in peak power. So that's actually not that impressive when you compare it to the YZ250F, which peaks at 42.7, and the KTMs, they're pushing 44 horsepower, just over 44, as well as the Kawasaki KX250. So not quite the same peak horsepower that it had before, but there's so much focus on the bottom end power with the CRF250 that it kind of makes up for the top end peak. You get a lot more snap coming out of the corners. It's easier to get going, easier to get into the power, and almost prevents you from making mistakes because it's so easy to pick up on the exit of turns. So that's a huge plus. As for the mapping, you have a map switch on the handlebars that you can switch between maps on the track. It's pretty nice. No, you can't do it on the track because you actually have to put it in the neutral, but map 1, one light flashing, the standard map. Map 2 is a little bit more mellow, and we appreciate that there is a good difference between the 3. And then map 3 with 3 lights flashing, that one is a little more aggressive, a little more snappy, pulls a little bit longer. So thanks to Honda for adding 3 different maps and giving us a good range for just the differences on the track. Now diving into the suspension. This is where things got crazy. I told you guys at the beginning of the video that Honda completely flipped their philosophy from 21 to 22. We loved the handling of the 2021 CRF250, but then when 2022 came around, they completely flipped. We now like the engine, but we hate the handling and the suspension, and it's mostly due to the forks on this bike. With a 4.8 fork springs on the Showa forks, these things are incredibly stiff. Whatever Showa did to the valving on these CRF250 forks is like Supercross stiff. We are not fans of it. We rode it back to back today with some of the other 250 four-strokes out there, just like it was in 2022. It's identical fork in 23, and it is way too stiff. It makes the bike feel really rigid on the track. They shifted their focus for 2022 and 23. Before, the handling was great and the engine was just subpar. Now the engine is great, but the handling is very subpar, super stiff on the front end, and it's going to take a lot of work to fix that. We've tried everything. We've tried lowering the oil height, going out on the clickers, raising and lowering the forks and the triple clamps, but the best solution is to take the forks off, put them in the UPS truck, and send them to your local suspension tuner, because that is the only way that you're going to find comfort on the CRF250. So thanks to Honda for making the engine better, but man, we miss the suspension and the handling that 2021 CRF250 had. In our original video, Honda flew us up to Oregon and we got to ride the 2022 CRF250 at Mountain View. That track had ruts, lots of really good traction. I was feeling amazing on the bike. Even there, the forks felt stiff to me, and it's always a little bit odd when I'm 175 and I'm pushing the bike and the stock suspension feels stiff, or even if it feels okay, that's like, okay, maybe this is gonna be a little bit too stiff for our vet riders and our novice riders and some of the people that are gonna watch our videos. So I'm always trying to think what's best for the average consumer and what's best for the wide range of riders that Honda is tailoring this bike to. At Mountain View that first day, because there was so much traction and the ruts were so deep, I was okay with the forks. I could make them work, but even there, they were too stiff. So when you get here to Glen Helen, where there's not as much traction and not as much, weight on the front end under braking, you need softer forks to get traction coming into corners. After doing a lot of testing on the CRF450, this bike's bigger brother, we have tried out the Ride Engineering offset triple clamps. They rake out the forks to 23.5 offset, and those triple clamps overall just extend the wheelbase a little bit, slack out the CRF450. We haven't tried them yet on the CRF250, but after just the twitchy handling that both Ezra and I were getting today here at Glen Helen when testing this bike, I think that those triple clamps will definitely help this model as well. They are plug and play. They fit on the CRF450 and they fit on the CRF250. So talking to Ezra, going back and forth between some other bikes today. Number one trait we have for the CRF250 is twitchy. It feels good when the track is smooth, but as soon as the track gets rough at the end of the day, it's hard to keep traction and it's hard to stick the corners and really be confident in what the motorcycle is going to do, especially in the high-speed sections. Talking more about traction, the Pirelli MX32 tires, we were not huge fans of them today, especially the rear tire. Like I mentioned, the MX32 Pirelli rear tire that Honda spec'd on this bike belongs on a 125 two-stroke. Why do I say that? Because it is a 100 width rear tire. 100 is very skinny and it's not something that belongs on a 250F. Those were made for 125 two-strokes, and the only reason that Honda put the Pirelli MX32 tires on and the skinnier rear tire on this bike is because they want to save weight. It saves about 2 pounds on the scales for your stock motorcycle by using these tires. With that 100 on the rear, we're immediately going to switch it out for a 110 rear tire as soon as we get it back to the MXA stables, because 110 will just give you a little more footprint on the rear. It'll make the suspension feel a little more plush, give you a lot more traction coming out of the corners, and overall just be a much better experience. As for the Pirelli MX32 front tire, we didn't have too big of an opinion on it. It was okay for us here today, but you do need to run a little more pressure in the front tire. We ran 14 PSI, where on a standard Dunlop MX33, we would run 13. Another big thing that Honda updated on the CRF250 for 2022 and that crosses over into 23 is that this bike is a lot lighter than it was before, and that helps the picking up, power coming out of corners, the handling, all things are better when the bike is lighter. And this bike is 8 pounds lighter on the scales than it was before, so very impressive. Now it weighs in at 219 pounds on the scales. That's just 2 pounds heavier than the Gas MC250F, and it's actually 5 pounds lighter than the KTM 250 SXF for 2023, which weighs in at 224. So Honda, big thumbs up on making their motorcycle a lot lighter, something that we definitely appreciate about this bike, and it's a big thumbs up. We also appreciate the durability of the CRF250. It's got a new 9-plate clutch up from an 8-plater. We put 44 hours on our CRF250 last year. Very impressed with the durability about it, and held up strong for us. So thanks to Honda for continuing to support the Motocross Action Wrecking Crew. Thanks to you guys for watching these videos. Yes, this bike is the same as it was last year, but like I mentioned, we put a lot more time on it, and we're going to continue to put time on it as we inch closer to MXA's 2023 250 4-stroke shootout. We got almost all of the bikes in our stables now. We're just waiting on the Yamaha YZ250F. So Yamaha, they're the last ones that are holding up the line for 250 and 450 shootout. As soon as we get those new bikes, we'll be able to run them through our paces and line them up for a shootout. So looking forward to that. Thank you guys for tuning into this video. If you haven't subscribed to the Motocross Action YouTube channel, you better do so to keep up to date with our latest videos. Also, if you have any questions about the CRF250, leave a comment down below. We always check those out, and maybe we'll include that in a future video or in the full magazine article from Motocross Action magazine. Thanks for watching. See you next time.